Yo, what the hell is this episode of Chainsaw Man? Like, Studio MAPPA, the staff, they were on some crazy stuff for this week's episode. Because, like, as a manga reader, coming from a manga reader, I'll tell you right now, this is above and beyond anything in the manga. Like, 100%, it is night and day. There's no competition in comparison to just the presentation of this episode, to the added scenes, to the POV, to some things that look a little bit more realistic slash rotoscoped, which I love that, by the way. Just like, this episode is just straight up quality. It's a quality episode. Like, they popped off. And, I mean, this is really saying a lot, honestly, because it's like, anyone that has made it this far for Chainsaw Man, Episode 8, anime only or manga reader, does not matter. I think we can all collectively agree that Chainsaw Man has just been astounding as an anime adaptation. It has looked absolutely beautiful. It has constantly blown our minds in terms of just how it can look. It looks movie quality often. It just shows the care, attention to detail, and love for Fujimoto's work, Chainsaw Man. And this episode is just like, imagine if we were looking through, like, 1 out of 10 episodes, okay? Like, let's say, like, all the episodes, we were rating it from 1 to 10, and we gave it maybe all collective, like, 8 or 9 out of 10 every single episode or something, okay? This episode breaks that scaling and goes up to, like, 99 or 100 out of, 10. Like, 10 out of 100. It is just, it's insane. Like, it's legitimately just an insane episode of Chainsaw Man, and I'm honestly just blown away by this. Like, I sat down, I knew what was coming. Like, I knew the dread, the fear, everything about this episode. I knew what was coming. I knew about the cursing right here. I knew about the Denji getting shot, the whole Makima scene with her basically getting shot in the train. There is a lot of stuff that happens within this episode I know coming. I knew it was coming because I was a manga reader. But when you actually see it visually on screen, and you just see by the way the scene is slowly building up, you feel this tension just building up throughout this entire sequence of events. And then this guy here just randomly starts talking to Denji and all of them. You're like, oh, this guy must be a part of that group that just did all this horrific stuff. And just back to back, you see characters that obviously we've been introduced to for the last, like, 8 episodes dying. Like, we literally see Makima dead. And it's just like, wait a minute, hold the freaking phone, okay? Like, Makima, she's dead, and, everybody's entire thought process on this is just going to be in a state of shock, especially just with everything that has been set up since the very beginning of the story, basically since episode 1, and then ever since we kind of met Makima and got a little bit more about her, and all this mystery around her, etc., and then just seeing something like this happen, it's like, wait, really? This really just happened to Makima? And then you have other characters, like we have, Kobeni, they get ambushed as well. We literally get to see Kobeni get ambushed by this elderly woman and behind her, and it's just like, okay, so Kobeni's gone too. It's back-to-back stuff when you actually just see what's happening here in this episode. And then, to really put icing on the cake, we have, Himeno, she also sacrifices everything. We literally see, like, the final moments of this episode when Aki looks over. This is honestly a really beautiful scene I want to talk about, the way she's just gone, okay? I think that what is very tasteful about this scene, like this, seeing Aki looking at, Himeno dead, I think what makes this beautiful is because there's no trace of her left. There's no blood, there's no bones, there's nothing. There's literally nothing left of Himeno there besides her clothing. And most people that start this episode, they're going to look at it in a very, let's be honest, like maybe a sexual manner, because of how Himeno was coming on to Denji. That's what people are going to view Himeno as a character as. Like, they're going to look at that because of the way the episode started off. I mean, hell, like, the literal POV perspective of this is just incredible, and I'll talk about this in a second, but everybody's thoughts and how they feel about her is going to be more on the, like, oh, this is kind of more of a perverted stuff. And then when you get to the final sequence, and you see, Aki look over to her, just gone, and you just see kind of like, her undergarments laying there, at first you might think, wow, did they really need to put something like that? But it shows just the absolute contrast of, the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode to a state of fluffiness to maybe like what you doing to what is happening here at the end. Is like, really, did this just happen? She's gone like that without a trace. It's a very depressing scene, and I think this is a really perfectly condensed episode to showcase why Fujimoto has become just so popular as a mangaka, why Chainsaw Man is popular, because this is condensed chaos. This entire episode is just pure 100% chaos, because honestly, you cannot tell me that the first half to the second half is night and day from each other. The first half is very sweet, uplifting to a certain extent. You even have this really cute little interaction between Himeno and Denji, trying to build each other up and basically make them go after who they want to be with. Like, Denji wants to be with Makima, and, Himeno, she wants to be with Aki. Everything about the sequence events is very cute. It's like, oh, they're gonna be partners, they're gonna be friends, it's nice to see. And obviously, when we see the second half, the entire contrast of the episode just changes. It's a completely different direction, and it's just honestly jaw-dropping, like especially this scene with Aki, and I gotta talk about this. So, most likely anyone that obviously watched this episode, they probably saw that the animation looked a little bit weird, and I took a few looks at this a bit, like I kept looking at the scene, rewinding it, looking at it, etc. And from what I can kind of see, they obviously wanted to go for more of a realistic movement. So they wanted the movement of Aki and everything going on in the scene to feel very, very realistic. Like, they didn't want it to feel like just an anime. They wanted it to look like it was humans moving their bodies around within this fight. Now, I don't know if this is just the animators slash, just artists drawing this and then just making it look like that, or if it's actually rotoscoped as well. I have no idea. I really don't know. And if anyone has better insight into this, I would love to know if this was rotoscoped or if this is just straight up art and animation that is made to look that human. Do let me know in the comments below, anyone that actually does have an insight into some of these scenes. But this is honestly just an incredible depiction of action and animation, and I would honestly say this is probably my favorite episode, easily, hands down, of Chainsaw Man. Like, there's honestly no competition, because it's just the gravity of the situation and what this episode really sets up. Like, we gotta think about, why these individuals are attacking the group in the first place, okay? We really gotta think about that. The whole beginning sequence of this, like when the guy's here talking with Denji, Aki, Power, and all of them, he starts to mention that Denji is being hunted by the Gun Devil, or his heart is being hunted by the Gun Devil. And so when we see this man have, a gun, and we see the other characters that initiate, like, the assassination of all these other characters, like, Kobeni, Makima, etc., we can assume that maybe they're in a cult that is following the Gun Devil. We have seen, humans already, like in the first episode, follow devils and fall into their tricks or traps and become basically servants to them. So we can assume that maybe this is a cult that follows the Gun Devil, and they're wanting to deliver Denji as a silver platter to the Gun Devil. We don't really know, but that's what you can get from the few little details that is presented in this episode, because they don't necessarily want Denji alive, they just want his heart, which is technically where, Pochita, gave Denji. Like, he's inside of Denji as his heart. So when you look at, like, everything when it comes to this sequence of events, it's just like, okay, so we might know who the bad guys are, but the question, though, is like, did we really just lose most of the cast of characters? Like, did we just lose, like, Makima, Kobeni, Himeno, like, all these characters that obviously have been set up quite a bit and have really had a lot of community discussion around. I mean, nobody's going to tell me that Makima hasn't had a lot of good discussion around her. Nobody's going to tell me that Kobeni hasn't as well. She was literally trending. And then, Himeno as well, thanks to this episode. Nobody's going to tell me that these three characters that, we basically saw die within this episode, you're not going to tell me that, like, they're not important characters. They are. And so when you see stuff like this, it's just like, okay, oh my goodness, like, Fujimoto really does have no chill in his series. Now, what makes this episode also just so incredible, and I want to kind of get off the dark and gloomy stuff of, let's say, this second half, I do want to talk about this beginning sequence, which I think is a lot of attention to detail that really does need to be shouted out. Because I know many people that look at this episode, they're going to instantly go into the perviness of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's obvious what the episode wanted you to feel, or kind of wanted you to think in certain given scenes of this episode. Like, especially when she comes on to Denji, like this moment right here. It's clear what, Fujimoto wanted you to feel, but also the animators when they made this scene. But there is a lot more going on here than just that, than those themes. There's a lot of maturity here that needs to be, spoken about. For one, we gotta look at just how Himeno, she clearly, she lets alcohol get to her. That is one thing we can definitely see. She is someone that is easily consumed by alcohol, and she's not able to control herself. We even see the first thing she does when she drops Denji back, into the bed and all that, and she walks out, she goes to the bathroom, takes off some of her clothes to get more comfy. She goes into her refrigerator right here, and she grabs another alcoholic drink, like a beer, and starts drinking it. And she wakes up Denji by literally, kissing him with, alcohol, which just showcases just how she lacks maturity, and this is a very mature scene to show how much maturity she lacks. And I think that is what makes this so incredible, is because they really depicted like someone that could just lose themselves to the booze, basically. Someone that's not able to control their actions, and how they can do just horrific things when they're not really aware of their current state of mind. Now, one thing as well is I want to point out how this event actually took place, because it is left up in the air, kind of, but it is stated, but it's still mysterious. Denji and obviously Himeno, they never actually did it. And the reason for that, it's made kind of apparent, is because he had a little lollipop in his pocket. And this lollipop, which obviously can be pretty funny by the way she pulls it out of his pants, because it can be used as an innuendo, when she pulls it out, she's like, ooh, this is disgusting. And it basically kills the entire mood in that moment. And it's clear that Himeno does not like that, lollipop, and Denji having that lollipop is thanks to Makima. Now, we can only make educated guesses here. It's only, like I said, educated guesses. But we can assume that the reason why Makima gave Denji, the lollipop, is to make sure he had a good memory. I mean, that's obviously what it was for. But the point is Denji keeping it on him could be used as a deterrent for, let's say, Himeno not to actually go all the way with him. So that is a way to kind of look at the scene. In a way, Makima protected Denji from doing things that maybe would have been too far. And, yeah. So that's one way to look at this scene. Makima pretty much cock-blocked Himeno, or Denji, in a way. But at the same time, it was a good thing. It was for the best of why it happened. So, I really actually like, I like the maturity of this scene. There's a lot to really gain from this, and that's not even talking about the art and animation department. Like, oh my goodness, like, you're not gonna tell me, like, some of the scenes, to the movements, the POV perspective, and just the tension of the scene, to the way the camera angles are, you're not gonna tell me that this isn't a great scene, not just for, the perverted nature of it. It's a very good scene just in art department alone. Now, speaking of art department, we gotta talk about this ending song. Oh my goodness, what an ending song. What an absolute stunning ending song. I really, really love this ending song. And I think this ending song is actually called First Death, by the way. Very fitting, and I think this imagery right here is really fitting for, obviously, what happened in this episode. The graves, that's Aki. He's holding flowers. We could assume this is him probably visiting, Himeno's grave or something. That's just the imagery of what it's trying to, depict. So it's a very depressing ending song, because obviously we lost a lot of characters in this episode, and seeing this is just like, oh man, they really kind of hammered in the nail on us when you see, like, just how the imagery of this ending song is. But yeah, just overall, man, like, Chainsaw Man, this episode is just like, what the hell? It is so good, and we got an introduction to a character, like a villain, that also is kind of similar to Denji. He has, like, knives on his head, so it's like, what's going on there? Just so much. There's just so much with this episode. We'll have to see where it goes, though, next week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about Episode 8. Were you just as stunned as I was? Be honest in the comments below. But with that, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.